Liam had already been to the infamous Wacky's Wonders once before. He had already met the kooky cast of clowns in his previous visit. It had always been Liam's goal to get a signature from all the clowns as mementos he could look back on in the future. He remembers his first visit so vividly. The smell of popcorn and cotton candy, the bright colors, and the laughter of fellow children around him. But most of all, the clowns. Liam had never been afraid of clowns. He was proud of himself for his bravery, knowing that many children his age were all afraid of them. But because he showed no hesitation in talking and playing with the brightly colored and admittedly odd personalities, the clowns loved performing for him, and he, in turn, loved their gimmicky acts and colors. On that trip, he got autographs from his favorite clowns, Wally, Crouchy, and Hugs. While he had met Wacky in his auditorium, however, he did not get the autograph he had hoped for. Wacky had told him that he had just run out of ink and couldn't sign any more autographs. Ran out of ink? Liam thought to himself. Couldn't he just grab another pen? Was he even using a pen? He didn't appear to have any writing utensil with him, and there wasn't one anywhere in the immediate vicinity that Liam could see. All he got that day was a handshake from the four-fingered, goofy-looking clown. He looked scarier in person, but Liam was fond of him. Out of all the clowns he had met that day, Wacky had the most charm, a childlike sense of humor to boot. This was Liam's first time going back since that day. This time he was accompanied by his friend, Noah, his best friend ever since first grade, both witty and comical, with an interest in the paranormal as well as Legos and Kinect's roller coasters. The two had many differences, of course, but their bond with each other had proved to be inseparable. Noah had never been to Wacky's Wonders, and with school starting up in less than a week, the two boys wanted to have one last hurrah before they were imprisoned within the cement wall confines of the classroom. The drive took just over 40 minutes, but before they knew it, they had arrived. Liam and Noah hopped out of the car, closely followed by Liam's mother. There was a wall in front that previously said, "No bad costumes," and "Don't touch my hammer." The only two rules of the attraction, funnily enough. But it seemed a cloth or banner of some sort had been draped over it. Not thinking much of it, however, Liam dismissed it. After buying entry and winding through the different rooms and exhibits, Liam and Noah were close to Wacky's auditorium. The building seemed rather quiet today. They had only seen a few other children, and some concerned-looking parents wandering around rather frantically when they first walked in. Since they had been there before, Liam and his mother knew the layout of the building relatively well. After all, it's not terribly big. Liam's mother told the boys that she needed to go to the bathroom, and that the boys stay put until she gets back. This was a pretty big inconvenience to the boys, considering Wacky's auditorium was no less than 20 feet away. The door was right there. They could even hear Wacky's booming voice coming from inside. It sounded like he was practicing or reciting something. Perhaps he was rehearsing an act? Or maybe he's in the middle of performing. They weren't sure. After waiting for about 20 minutes outside the door, they started to get worried. Liam's mother had not returned. The boys gave each other a look that indicated they were thinking the same thing. What could she be doing? Not only were they worried, they were also excited. They knew it was a bad idea, but they couldn't wait any longer. They looked at each other once again. Liam nodded his head at Noah. Noah nodded back. Quietly, the two went inside his room. The purple lights that once illuminated the room with ease seemed to be darker than they usually were. The silence was all too palpable, almost as if the music had been turned off. There were no people. Just a large room with a small stage in the corner, its curtains closed. Noah told Liam that this probably wasn't a good idea, but Liam didn't care. He crept over to the closed curtains on tiptoes, being quiet to see if he could hear any activity behind them. He was about a foot away from the curtains at this point, leaning in with his right ear. He couldn't hear anything besides breathing. It didn't click with him at first, but once it did, it was too late for him to act. The curtains swung open lightning fast with a thud as they hit the walls forcefully. Liam was knocked onto the ground and frozen in fear.
"Surprise!"
Wacky shouted at the top of his lungs. Noah was watching from afar, petrified. Neither of them were registering anything clearly yet. Both were in shock.
"Oh, I got you guys good,"
the wide-mouthed clown exclaimed with a deep maniacal chuckle. At this point, the boys thought that they were merely the victims of a gag, played for laughs. Liam got up, and Noah approached the two of them, laughing as well. After the laughter settled down, Wacky recognized Liam. He stepped down from his stage, with his brightly colored clothes, oversized shoes, and a glowing yellow mallet in hand. It was then that Liam started explaining his motives for coming back, that he previously was denied an autograph, but was back to see if he could receive one now, as well as to see the other clowns again and possibly talk to them. He also explained that he brought his friend Noah along with him this time too. Noah was still a bit too afraid to go up to Wacky up close. It didn't take long before Wacky went up to him and took one of his hands, grasping it in his four-fingered gloved grip, and shook it violently. With that kind of force, Liam was surprised he didn't accidentally dislocate Noah's arm. After Wacky's happy greeting with Noah, he turned his attention back to Liam. Liam had gotten so lost in the conversation, he had completely forgot he came to get Wacky's signature. But Wacky was happy to answer question after question. Liam had turned his attention to the hammer. "What's with the hammer?" Liam questioned.
"Well, since you asked, this hammer is my prized possession. For as long as I've been entertaining, I've had this thing by my side. Its name is Malleus, which is the name my friend Wally suggested to me. I think it's Latin for hammer, but I'm not sure."
Liam was really intrigued by the hammer. He had never thought it had that much depth to it. He had just assumed it was for an act or something. Liam looked at Noah, and to Liam's surprise, Noah also seemed to be transfixed by the brightly colored hammer. "Can I hold it?" Liam asked. Wacky's smile dwindled a bit.
"No."
The reply was a bit cold, very stern, and the mood turned a bit sour. All of a sudden, the intercom boomed to life, with static, and what sounded like a voice. After a few seconds of connection issues, the voice came through. It was Wally.
"To anyone currently in the building, the mummy exhibit will be temporarily closed. Some little brat pissed their pants again."
After the intercom cut off, the three of them kept staring at it with a dazed look on their face. After a few seconds, Wacky dropped his hammer and with disdain stated that he'll be right back. Within a few seconds, he disappeared within the depths of the curtains. "Dude, he left his hammer," Noah said. Noah, he said not to touch it. "Come on, Liam, I'm only gonna hold it for a few seconds. I want to see how heavy it is." Noah picked up the hammer and started swinging it around carelessly. He was obviously enjoying himself. He was the more carefree of the two. "Noah, please put the hammer down," Liam whined. "No," Noah affirmed. Liam stood with his back to the curtains, watching in disbelief as Noah was playing with Wacky's hammer and incessantly babbling as he did so. All of a sudden, he felt a hand on his shoulder. "What's going on here, Liam?" Liam's heart sank when he recognized Wacky's voice. Noah noticed Wacky standing behind Liam and quickly dropped the hammer. Thud. Wacky made his way past Liam. His large face was noticeably not as happy as it was. He almost wasn't smiling anymore. "What did I tell you when I left?" Before Noah could even answer, Wacky raised his voice and spoke again. "Can you even read? The sign on the front of my building says not to touch my hammer." The sign. Noah didn't see the sign. It was obscured. Even then, would Noah have behaved any better? When Wacky said not to touch his hammer to his face, he did it anyway. Wacky forcefully snatched the hammer back from Noah. He turned around and started to walk away, until he cocked his shoulders, turned around, and swung at Noah's head. Liam stood there in utter shock and disbelief as he saw Wacky land his hammer square on the side of Noah's head, causing teeth to fly and a spattering of blood staining the wall. A hit like that would have had to knock him out instantly. Could a hit like that even possibly kill him? Well, in a matter of seconds, that question is irrelevant. Noah laid face down on the cold concrete floor. 1, 2, 3. Liam watched powerless, too scared to even move. 4, 5, 6. He just kept going, brain matter, hair, and blood going everywhere in a violent storm. 7, 8, 9. The hits kept coming. The sound of Noah's skull being smashed to bits, the sickening squish of blood, his brain, his hair, and his teeth. Liam could even see an eyeball floating around in that horrid mess Wacky was making out of his former friend. 10, 11, 12. Wacky stopped. Liam was reduced to sobbing uncontrollably behind Wacky. Wacky began to stand up, panting, looking upon what he's just done. His grin now stretching all the way across his face, looking quite pleased with himself. His eyes in bright colors glowing bright under the black light. Liam, through a choked voice, uttered, "He didn't mean to." He quietly tried to defend his friend, knowing full well Noah was being irresponsible. Wacky turned around to face Liam, looking happy as could be. "Oh, I almost forgot. You came for an autograph," he exclaimed and giggled. He put his thumb on the back of his hammer's handle and pressed a very small button that had previously gone unnoticed. When Wacky pressed the button, a large pen tip came shooting out the bottom of the handle. With that, Wacky approached Liam, who was cowering in fear, and snatched a notepad that was half hanging out of his pocket. Wacky walked back over to the mess, dipped his hammer, or pen tip, in the puddle of blood, and began signing his name. Once he was done, he turned back around and tossed Liam his notepad. Liam didn't catch it. Instead, it went smack down in the middle of the floor, with Wacky's signature still facing up. "Wacky Mole," it read, in the blood of his best friend. All Liam could do was cry as he saw the big, glowing clown shoes walk toward him.